What's going on, everybody? Brezzy43 here. I am back with our next video. We're going to be fighting the sun a little bit again today, but hopefully it's not too distracting. It seems like I'm able to focus my camera for now, so we'll do this quickly here. So we're back. We're going to be exploring another restricted Pokemon today. Last video we built a Zashan team, and I don't want to spend too much on Zashan just because I feel like it's going to be one of the most used Pokemon in the metagame, and other people are going to be building with it, and I don't really want to focus too much on copying what other people have been doing. I think that my take on Zashan in the last video was a really unique take that I personally would find a lot of enjoyment using, and so I wanted to share it. But I think that Zashan is a really strong Pokemon, and I will probably end up using it as well. But today's video is going to be primarily focused on Kyogre. It's the next restricted Pokemon that I know a lot of people will use as well, but Kyogre is a really cool Pokemon, and it's one of my favorites from my childhood. So I want to show a couple of teams that I've been thinking about with it, and what kind of share some of the things that other people have been doing that have been working. But before we do that, I also wanted to show one more Zashan team that I saw somebody using on ladder recently that looked really, I don't even know if it was on ladder. I think I saw it on a showdown room. The team looked really, really solid, and it was something that I personally would find a lot of enjoyment using. So let's talk about that team first here, and then we'll move into Kyogre. So real quick, this is the Zashan team that I saw somebody using, and I think it looks amazing. So this is a really cool take on Zashan. You've got Zashan, obviously, Amoonguss for redirection. I don't know the move sets of most of these. I would imagine now that Xerneas is back, Clear Smog would be the attacking move of choice for Amoonguss, though I'm not entirely sure on that. Incineroar, because it's Incineroar, very nice support partner with the Amoonguss, and Incineroar is phenomenal in these restricted formats. And then Crobat. Crobat's a really cool Pokemon that I talked about in my tier list video, something that I plan to use. Crobat has a lot of draw to it, in my opinion. It's one of the fastest. It's actually tied with Aerodactyl for the fastest Tailwind user in terms of raw speed stat. Now, obviously, Prankster goes first, but there's some ways around, like depending on what item you want to run for Crobat. I think that setting up the Tailwind and having base 130 speed is really, really cool. Additionally, with Inner Focus being buffed to make you immune to Intimidate, you can actually run Brave Bird and deal substantial amounts of damage. If you choose to give Crobat a Focus Sash, you can run max speed, max attack, and deal good amounts of damage with Brave Bird. 90 attack is nothing awful. It's not amazing, but it's certainly like a respectable stat. And Brave Bird being 120 base power, we've seen Pokemon like Talonflame do tons of work with even less attack stat because of how strong of a move Brave Bird is. So I really like this, and I think that this is a cool Tailwind setter for this team. Additionally, Sheer Force Life Orb Landorus is really, really cool, and something that I plan to use a little bit of myself. We talked about it in our last video, or one of the last videos I did recently, where Protect, Earth Power, Sludge Bomb, and then either Substitute or U-Turn makes this thing an absolute powerhouse. Sheer Force Life Orb off of a 115 special attack stat is outrageous. You're going to be doing a ton of damage to these things, and it's a really nice offensive counterpoint to Zacian, because Zacian struggles versus fire types. It can struggle against things like Groudon, and Landorus, although it doesn't offensively pressure Groudon that hard, it still hits it with strong ground attacks on the special side of the spectrum, and it's immune to Groudon's Precipice Blades. So that's really, really cool. Additionally, I think the person using the team was running Rotom Wash, but I actually think Milotic might fit the team better. Rotom's got some unique synergy and good typing, but Milotic has competitive, which deters away Intimidates from Zacian, and it gets access to Icy Wind. So this is a really cool, like a secondary speed control for Zacian to slow things down, and even Landorus as well. Slow your opponent down, and you could do something like, if you're expecting heavy Intimidates from your opponent, you could do something like lead Crobat Milotic, bring Zacian +1 in the back, and you can get Brave Bird up, you can get Quick Guard going to prevent fake outs from hitting your allies, things of that nature. And because of Milotic stats, you could pretty easily EV this thing to survive both electric attacks from Regieleki as well as grass attacks from Rillaboom. You can intimidate, you can pivot into it, and you've got you could run Citrus or Rindo Berry or something like that. But this 125 special defense stat makes it pretty immune to Aleki, which is solid. But overall, I really like this team's type synergy. You do overlap a few weaknesses, just to highlight a couple of them. You do have 3 Ice Weeks. Not that Ice is super common outside of Ice Beam on Porygon. It remains to be seen how popular a Pokemon like Calyrex is going to be in this metagame, just because of the nerf to those Pokemon with the removal of Dynamax. But Ice Beam being a common coverage move on something like Porygon and maybe other water types like Ice Beam Kyogre or whatnot, being able to have that as one of your, or with that being one of your only overlapping weaknesses, I think that's okay. Additionally, you've got 2 ground weeks here, but you do have 2 ground immunities, which is really nice. And then you do have 2 electric weeks, but you've got an electric immunity and electric resist. So overall, this team has really solid type synergies and ways to overlap typing. A really strong fire, water, grass core here, in addition to steel, fairy, and then you do have 2 poison types, which does overlap your psychic weakness, but you do have a psychic resist and a psychic immunity, so it's not a big deal. But yeah, I definitely would recommend checking this team out. This is a team that I will probably build on cartridge to use just because I love Crobat. So yeah, but now we're going to talk about Kyogre. So recently, I'm just going to pull up my team from the last video. This was the Zashan team that I built before, and one of my close friends who watched the video asked me, does Ludicolo, or can Ludicolo work on a Kyogre team? Can you build a similar team to this, but with Kyogre? And the short, I didn't even think of that, first of all. Second of all, yes, you can. And I started to do that already here. I'll just pull this up. So there's a couple of different ways that you can take this team. Let me just go back here to select this so I don't have to mess with the... So you can drop the Zashan and then change the Politoed into Kyogre, and you can have Ludicolo run more of a supportive set for Kyogre. I think you still want Leaf Storm, but maybe you're okay with running like Scald and Energy Ball instead. But Ludicolo gets access to Icy Wind, same as Politoed. So Ludicolo can actually pressure opposing water types, which would wall Kyogre, and also slow things down with Icy Wind. And getting access to Rain, Swift Swim, Icy Wind is super, super solid. And additionally, you get the fastest fake out on the field in most situations. So you'll be able to fake out whatever from your opponent and let Kyogre get a free attack. And you can still mimic some of what's going on with that Gothitelle Zashan mode that I was talking about with Gothitelle Urshifu. This is a real, like, Urshifu does, this is one of the cores that people are scared of right now, and I think for good reason. Gothitelle getting access to fake out and trapping your opponent makes, whoops, what did I do? Undo, okay. Gothitelle gets access to fake out and shadow tag, so your opponent can't switch, and they can't, they have to fake out their first or faster than Gothitelle in order for fake out to actually work. But Urshifu attacks through protect. So normally in a situation against an offensive lead, your opponent might try to protect and reposition by switching. But in both those situations, they can't actually do that. So this is a really cool other way to take the team. I don't really have to say too much about this Pokemon. Wicked Blow, Close Combat, and Sucker Punch. It remains to be seen exactly how to EV Gothitelle on a team like this. If it's important to outspeed as many fake outs as possible, I could see running Timid, in which case the Focus Sash would be moved over to the Gothitelle, and then Urshifu could run something like Choice Band or something of that nature. But I think that Ludicolo working in conjunction with Kyogre is really cool. One of the things that when I first pulled up the team, you saw Marowak here. If there is a EV spread that exists for Kyogre that allows you to outspeed the things you need to outspeed after an Icy Wind drop, while also functioning inside Trick Room, this Incineroar could be switched over to Alolan Marowak. Alolan Marowak has good synergy with Kyogre by being having Lightning Rod to do things with against the Lecky. It also works really nicely alongside Gothitelle as something that we had done in a little bit of Series 9. Trapping your opponent in next to Gothitelle is really backbreaking in a lot of situations, especially if they're caught off guard. This just leans a bit harder into the Gothitelle. Additionally, obviously this is going to be Thick Club, but additionally you could run Marowak in two different ways. You could run offensive Marowak and run like Flare Blitz, Shadow Bone, and Bone Meringue. And then you're going to want to be max HP. I think my spread, if I remember correctly, was 20... for, I think I was 220 here, and then 12. And I think this spread would have to be revisited because this 12 was here for a little bit of investment and an even number for max Quake boosts, which obviously doesn't happen anymore. But this is still a strong fire type with Incineroar, and it works with Gothitelle setting Trick Room for you. If you're going to drop a move, it would probably have to be Protect in this case. So especially if you're going timid max speed, you don't really need to have Protect as much. But alternatively, if you don't want to go offensive Marowak, or you don't really find the ground coverage being all that necessary, you can actually run Perish. And then you can continue to use the Perish Song mode with Gothitelle, and you've got a really cool Perish mode of like Gothitelle, Kyogre, Marowak, Rillaboom. And even though, again, we have double grass here, I think that this is fine. This still works really nicely with, they kind of do different things. Rillaboom's good for pivoting and attacks on the physical side. Ludicolo may not click Leaf Storm all that much. It's probably going to be wanting to click water attacks or Icy Wind or what have you. So, yeah, this could be a really cool way to take the team. It's something that I might look into exploring myself. I would probably stick with Incineroar at least to start, just because Incineroar provides so much utility in a restricted format with its typing and Fake Out and Parting Shot and Snarl and things of that nature. But this would be a really cool variation of the team as well. The other two variations of Kyogre that I wanted to discuss today are two very different versions of the team, or two very different Kyogre teams. One of them is what is popular right now and what people are using on these teams, or in these showdown rooms, and the other one is going to be a version of the team that I would play, and just some ideas that I've been juggling around. Now, obviously, Kyogre plus Tailwind is really, really strong. So you could use Tornadus, or you could use something like Crobat, or you could use Talonflame, which is something that I did in Players Cup. But I think next to Kyogre, I think Tornadus is probably the strongest Tailwind setter next to Kyogre, just because you have Prankster, and you also take advantage of Drizzle by having Hurricane. And this thing has 125 base special attack, which makes it a real threat, especially in a non-Dynamax format next to Kyogre. Additionally, one really cool tech that some of these people have been using on Kyogre lately has been Serena. With all the Fake Out going around right now, Serena has a ton of utility against these teams by having Queenly Majesty to shut down Fake Out, and also shut down Sucker Punch from Urshifus, but most importantly, shut down Grassy Glide from Rillaboom. Rillaboom is one of the few Pokemon that actually fully pressures Kyogre, and Kyogre has a really difficult time taking Grassy Glides, even with the impressive stats that Kyogre does have. Serena completely shuts that down. Additionally, Serena is a Grass type, so with pretty solid stats overall. So Serena can pressure Regieleki with Grass attacks, but more importantly, because of Triple Axle, it can pressure Urshifu with Ice attacks. So I was thinking something like this would be really cool. If you like running around with Power Whip, that's fine. I might end up running Trop Kick if I miss Power Whip too many times. Power Whip kind of frustrates me as a move. Otherwise, is there a different Grass physical attack that she gets? She gets Seed Bomb. I guess, like, these are pretty similar moves. You probably just pick one of them. And then you have a couple different options here. I think Helping Hand is a really cool pickup for Serena. It allows it to position next to Kyogre and go for Helping Hands for Kyogre to deal a ton of damage with Water Spout. Additionally, if you want to run high jump kick, you can. This is pretty good tech against opposing Incineroar. You could EV for, not that you really have a tough time with Incineroar anyway, but 120 attack is quite impressive. It's up there with Rillaboom's attack stat. And the defense stats are pretty solid. HP leaves a little bit to be desired, but that's okay. Otherwise, Taunt, I think, is a really cool move as well. Taunt is kind of like a nice check to some of the kind of like random stuff you might encounter on the ladder. Kyogre, I think I still have my spread. If I remember correctly, I have to visualize it for a second. I think this was my spread. No, it's one more point here. Yes, this was my spread. Excuse me. This spread outspeeds Regieleki in Tailwind. So just to confirm that, if you take a calculator and you run 139 times 2, you get 278. And Regieleki, it's timid Regieleki, it's 277. So this is the fastest that you need to go with Kyogre, unless you want to outspeed other Kyogre, and not in a Tailwind situation. So that's up to you if you want to do that. I think that I would just stick with this spread. Tornadus is probably just going to be this. It depends on the item. I think in this format, so Kyogre is going to be Protect. I still like Mystic Water. I know some people are running Scarf. I like Mystic Water. I like the ability. I think having the ability to Protect is really important in this format. Water Spout's a given, and I think Ice Beam is really solid right now. You have Serena and potentially an electric type attack or electric Pokemon to work on opposing water types. So you don't really need to have Thunder. And flying, I still expect flying types to go down quite a bit. So having Ice Beam to hit some of the grass types that are running around, and also to still pressure flying types, is really nice. And the last move is going to be up to you. Origin Pulse is an obvious one, but if the metagame is shifting into a place where Wide Guard is on every team, then you're going to probably want Scald. You've got good strong spread damage with Water Spout anyway. You just like having Scald as another option might catch those Wide Guarders by surprise. And Wide Guard is picking up a lot in popularity, so just be on the lookout for that. Origin Pulse or Scald work here. Tornadus, I know we'll come back to this. I shouldn't be doing the spreads already here, but I'm kind of getting excited about it because this team is really cool. Incineroar is a really obvious one that a lot of these teams are using as well. Just goes on all these teams, and it's super, super good. In a Dynamax format, Incineroar is king. I said Dynamax. I meant to say restricted. Sorry. In a restricted format, Incineroar is king. If you look at past, let's just pull up Pikalytics quick. If you look at past metagames, let's look at 2019. Where is it? 2019 Ultra Series. Incin 76% of teams. Incin 2019 Moon Series, 90% of teams. And in the 2019 Sun Series, 74%. So Incin matches up amazingly into all these restricted Pokemon. The only one it really struggles with is, I mean, there's obviously ways of killing it, but because it's so bulky, it's so difficult to one-shot, and it has a really, really annoying kit. And people complain a lot about Incineroar. I actually love the fact that Incineroar exists as a Pokemon in a metagame. For me, it's a check to all the BS that runs around in these formats. You don't want to deal with, like, Pokemon is a very diverse game, and you run into people running a ton of different Pokemon, and they can all do different things. And sometimes you run into somebody who's got a very weird team that does something that you're not prepared for. Incineroar's kit allows you the comfortability of knowing that you're going to be able to check a lot of Pokemon in the game. You're going to be able to intimidate them. You're going to be able to parting shot them, fake them out, not die to their attacks. And you have Taunt if you want to run Taunt. Taunt is a phenomenal move on Incineroar and just on Dark types in general. You can't be taunted yourself by Prankster Taunt. And to me, it just, like, Incineroar is a great Pokemon. In a restricted metagame, I would encourage you to use it. Dark typing is phenomenal against a lot of the Psychic and Ghost types running around. Fire is good against the Steels and the Fairies. Incineroar is a great check to a lot of what's popular in this metagame and what will continue to be popular. So we've got a decent start here. We've got a Fire, Water, Grass going. I really like a strong electric type on this team, and there's two that I'm thinking about. Now, I think Regieleki is the obvious choice. I think Regieleki is really solid, and I really like it. I think that it works on this team as another means of speed control. You're probably going to run Magnet, and you're probably going to run Electroweb. But from here, the rest of the moves are up to you. I think that Thunder has a lot of longevity in this metagame, especially with Drizzle giving it 100% accuracy. So you've got Thunder as a really strong check to water types even further. Stab, Magnet boosted, Transistor boosted Thunderbolt is really good. Now imagine it with Thunder. And then you're probably going to want to run Protect, just because Protect has gains a ton of mileage on a team like this, especially with all the Fake Out running around. And the last move could be a couple different things. It could be Volt Switch for positioning. It could be Thunderbolt for 100% accuracy. It could be like Hyper Beam so you don't get walled. Whatever you want there is totally fine. The other electric type, actually there's two of them that I was considering. I think Tapu Koko could be interesting. I don't know if people have been testing it out as much, but Koko's electric terrain. I think having terrain in restricted metagames is really important, especially with Indeedee running around everywhere and Rillaboom running around everywhere and all these different things that, all these different terrains that people are using. I think that it's really important to have access to it somewhere on your team. The other Pokemon that could be really interesting in this slot is Zapdos. Zapdos is just straight Kanto Zapdos. Zapdos is probably going to be better than, Tapu Koko, without, at least initially. It has 100% accuracy Hurricanes. It has Thunder as well, and it has Heat Wave or Volt Switch or Detect or whatever you want. So Zapdos could be really interesting as well. But for now, we're going to just stick with Aleki. I think Aleki is probably the strongest option here. And then the last Pokemon, I don't really know. I've been seeing a lot of mixed. I've been seeing people. So a lot of teams really like having a Steel type on their Kyogre, or a lot of players really like having a Steel type on their Kyogre teams. So you could look at, like, I've been seeing Double Grass with something like Kartana. I've also been seeing some people look to, I forget the name now. Like Metagross still has some usage, right? Metagross is still pretty decent. You probably change the moves, and you might even like run like a Colbur Berry or something, but you can run Bullet Punch, and Bullet Punch is really cool. Otherwise, like something like Celesteela is really interesting. I think Celesteela has a really unique kit here as well. Ferrothorn could work too for another endgame Pokemon. Aegislash kind of works. In fact, we'll put Aegislash on here for now. I think Aegislash is really cool. It has access to Wide Guard, which is one of the best moves that support Pokemon can have right now, or like a pseudo support. This thing obviously does a ton of damage, but something like Wide Guard, King Shield, Steel. Depending on what you want to go with, if you want to go with special or physical. If you go with physical, I feel like you would want to have Shadow Sneak. And then you would want to have like Iron Head or Sacred Sword. But if you go with special, you're probably just going to run Shadow Ball. And then you're going to run Flash Cannon. And then the item here is Lefties. And then you want to go max HP, and then you want to go max special attack, and then just put 1 point here, most likely. These, because of the ability to switch back and forth, I think this is really like what you would need. You don't really need to invest in your defenses, but having your offensive capability be able to deal good damage is really important. So that's Aegislash, that's Aleki. We'll just fill in these EVs. Incin, Fake Out, Parting Shot, Flare Blitz, last move. I think a dark move is really important right now, so you could go with something like Snarl or Darkest Lariat. And then this is just the default Incin spread that I've been going to. So you could just run this, and Then for your item, you could run Safety Goggles. You could run Citrus Berry. Citrus Berry seems really good. This EV spread always takes +2 Moonblast from Xern. You might want to end up running some speed too inside Tailwind, but this is a decent place to start with this. For Serena, there's a couple of items I'm thinking about. You could go 4 attacks here and run Assault Vest if you want. You could also just leave it with Taunt, or you could run like Low Kick would be really cool against some things. Zen Headbutt could be, or U-Turn would be really good too. So you could do something like this with Assault Vest. This is really cool. And then you could run. I don't know much about these EV spreads for Serena, to be honest. You'd probably have to do some calcs and figure out what speed stat you want, but I imagine you would be adamant with some amount of speed, a good amount of attack, and probably max HP, just because it's your weakest stat that you kind of want to have up there. So you probably would EV this thing similar to how you would EV Rillaboom. You probably don't need to do anything too fancy. Here's the bump right now, so 76. So you could go like 156, and you could go like something like this, for example. I don't know, this speed obviously what's most important is you hit the speed stat that you want. So whatever speed stat you want to get to is really important. So definitely make sure you EV for that. Once you hit your speed stat you want, the attack and stuff like that doesn't really matter all that much. And then in terms of Tornadus, we've got Focus Sash available, so I think Sash is fine. And then I also, you could also run like Life Orb too. I know some people run Life Orb, but you probably want to run Protect. And then you're going to want Hurricane for damage, Tailwind, because that's the whole reason why we're running this Pokemon. Then the last move, you've got some options. You could run Taunt. You could run Foul Play, seems interesting. You could run Heat Wave. You could run Substitute. You could run U-Turn. There's a ton of things you could do, but for now we'll just put Taunt, and then we'll be Timid. I know some people ran like a support Tornadus with like Citrus Berry or something, so that's an option too. But I think that this is a pretty reasonable EV spread for and moveset, at least to start, to get you testing and stuff like that. But this is a classic Torn Ogre team, in my opinion. Has a ton of offensive prowess. Very offensive team, actually. Usually Tailwind teams want to be reasonably offensive, so I like this a lot. And this is something that I might look at myself. But the last team is a take on Kyogre that I'm a little bit interested in myself. I think that the Raichu Kyogre Bronzong core is really strong. And maybe Bronzong, the reason why I say that is, let's take a look once. There's a couple of things that I want to show you real quick while we're still. So let's pull up Bronzong. Blink set, level 50, and let's pull up Urshifu. Okay, so let's say Choice Band, and let's say it's Jolly. Most of them are going to be Jolly. I don't think a lot of people run Adamant. All right, so let's put Cobra Berry on here, and then let's go 252 HP. So right out the get-go, you already see that you take it, right? Cobra Berry takes it. Additionally, let's take a look at Calyrex Shadow. So Calyrex Shadow, we're gonna run. I think we're gonna see if we can EV for Timid Life Orb. We're gonna look at Life Orb. Okay, we want Astral, and we want Shadow Ball, and we want doubles. Okay, and then we want 252. All right, so let's see if we can take this, right? So let's take a look at, let's go Sassy Nature, because Sassy is going to be probably what's preferred in this metagame. And then we're going to look at seeing if we can survive these hits. Where does he get the jump? I forget. This is one of my favorite Pokemon. There it is. So 108. So 188 is the next jump. Let's go to 188 once. Okay, so this gives us a... This basically makes it so Shadow Ball never KOs. And then Astro Barrage is 56.3%. I thought this was closer. Maybe the Life Orb is what's skewing this a little bit. How far up can we get to the next jump? Okay, so there's 43. So 236 gives us a 43.8% chance to survive, which means that we only get a little bit into defense. So maybe... So let's go back down to 188 once. So 68.8%. That still gives us a good amount to dump into defense. But the real thing I wanted to talk about with why this Pokemon is so interesting to me is Xerneas. So if we look at Uber's Geomancy Xerneas and we put it at... most Xerneas, in my opinion, are going to be timid. There's just a lot of reason to be timid. And +2. We can look at +2 here as well, so you can see it. +2 Moonblast, it only is a 0.4% chance to 2-shot. Okay, so that's important. Like I said, Xerneas is on a tier of its own, so being able to survive, almost always survive +2 Moonblast is huge. Additionally, if you look at Gyro Ball 2-shots Xerneas with no investment, which is a huge draw to something like to these steel types that have Gyro Ball, in my opinion. So I really like Bronzong, and I think the rest, like we may have to think about like positioning around the Life Orb, right? So, but Bronzong would Levitate and then running 0 speed. Oh, we're not even 0 speed. Look at this once. Oh, it doesn't even push it anymore. Never mind. I guess I got hyped for that. So, pretty good amount of damage. Oh, wait, this is 168 defense. This is way more defense than they're even going to run. So, Gyro Ball with no investment defensively does a ton of damage. This could die to something else pretty easily if you've chipped it at all. So, Bronzong with 0 speed Sassy and then 188. That still gives you 68 to put here, which is not nothing, right? Real quick, I just want to do something. 176 is what we want to hit. Okay, we can't hit it anyway. Never mind. One of the things I was going to talk about really quick. Let me just sniff this and I'll show you. This was something else I was looking at earlier. So before I looked at Life Orb, if we take the Life Orb off of the Calyrex, Calyrex Shadow, Choice Specs 50, and we put this on, if we take off the item, and let's say for some reason it's like Focus Sash, right? I did this calc, and you need way less investment to take this. I forget how much it was. What was it? Oh yeah, so it's like 154, and then that gave you a ton of extra bulk to move into your. So if we go down to 154, that's the stat that survives it, right? And we put the rest into this, we hit 165. But one of the things you should always check is you should flip the nature and see if you get an extra point. So remember, 165 defense, 154 special defense. So let's take this off and let's hit 154 now. Okay, there's 154. We hit our stat mark that we want. And now let's put the rest into this and let's give it a defense boosted nature. You see? We still have the special defense stat that we want, but we ended up getting one more defense point, which makes it so so it's more optimal to EV this way. So you change your nature around and you get the extra point rather than using a SPDF boosted nature. Does that make sense? It's kind of weird how that works, but this is something that would be really interesting, and it would allow. So this is a potential way that we could start until we figure out what the most common item is on Calyrex. If it ends up being Life Orb, we can revisit the EV spread. But this takes Astro Barrage. Does it take Shadow Ball? Yes, it takes Shadow Ball as well. So, well, hang on. Relaxed. It should still take it. Because we hit the same stat mark. Yeah. Perfect. But that actually, the reason why that's important is because this allows us to run something like Gyro Ball, Trick Room, Body Press, and Iron Defense. This gives us an even number for Iron Defense boosts and makes it so our Body Presses do more damage, which makes it so we can actually have a decent matchup into something like Zashan. Really quick as well, just to look at this. Zacian. Let's say it's Jolly Max. So it's almost a two-shot. Gyro Ball is does a pretty good chunk of damage. And Sacred Sword is almost a two-shot, but that's before our defense EVs, so let's put in 116. So Sacred Sword is a two-shot, and Gyro Ball, or Sacred Sword and Gyro Ball don't two-shot. So if we get the right speed control, or we've intimidated Zashan, then we can survive. So Bronzong is really interesting to me for a team like this. And we said Cobra Berry, so we can take the Urshifu. The reason why we can't run Kasib Berry is obviously because Calyrex prevents you from being able to eat berries, right? So this is Kyogre, Raichu, Bronzong, Incineroar. Again, for Incineroar reasons, I think Incineroar is fantastic, and it fits on this team as well. Also, Snarl. Snarl could potentially improve that Calyrex matchup, and I think Snarl is really good here. So because we've got a Ghost Week and a Dark Week, and Kyogre doesn't necessarily match up all that well against the Ice Rider, or not Ice Rider, excuse me, Shadow Rider. I think Moltres Galar actually is really interesting here. It's a Pokemon that with 90 base speed can actually function pretty well inside of Trick Room. I have a really bulky set on here that I don't know where it came from. I don't know whose spread this is. I don't know if it's mine that I developed or if it's somebody else's. Obviously, we're not going to run Weakness Policy, but Moltres is a really enticing Pokemon that that you could run in a number of different ways. Can we, against Xerneas, we're going to be leaning on Bronzong, but let's just say for hypothetical purposes. And we have Air Slash, and we are timid. Yeah, okay. So that's unfortunate. So we definitely don't want to bring Moltres against Xerneas, which I was expecting anyway. This is non-boosted Xerneas with just with Fairy Aura, so we're not going to want to bring Moltres. But Moltres with a berry seems really cool to me. Something like Iapapa Berry, so that way you can get a ton. You can get a Berserk trigger and then get a ton of healing. So you could do like EV for a little bit of special attack here, whatever speed stat we want for Trick Room, and then we could put the rest into bulk, and then you get Fiery Wrath, Air Slash, Foul Play, and then maybe like Protect. Foul Play seems really solid against a lot of Pokemon, and you're not super weak to Wide Guard this way because you have two moves that still hit through it. How much does this do to Zashan? Let's take a look at Foul Play ones. So Foul Play does quite a bit, actually. They don't always run Wild Charge, but we could definitely dump more into defense to survive the Behemoth Blade. Like, it wouldn't really take that much more. It looks like it's just that much. So, obviously, we could run more than that. But I think Moltres is a really cool Pokemon against the Shadow Rider. And Fiery Wrath is a really nice way to get around the Indeedee, right? And then from here, I'm not entirely sure what we would want for our last Pokemon. We could run a grass type like Rillaboom, so we have terrain, and that's probably where I'll start. I'm probably going to do some testing with this, but Grassy Surge Rillaboom seems really solid to me. Kyogre, we're probably going to run Sea Incense, Protect, Water Spout, Ice Beam, and then for reasons like I told you before, I'm going to run Scald over Origin Pulse. And then we could take this a couple different ways. We could go for like bulky and offensive with just a little bit of speed, and then whatever we wanted to put in for this stat, I don't actually know what it would be, but this is just like something I could throw on there to start. And then I wonder if we could take Grassy Glide. Maybe that's something we can look at quick. Okay. So we already take the -1. Can we take the non-1? Ice Beam almost KOs back as well. Let's put this back to neutral. And let's just start putting some defense in here. So it looks like we can get it to like a reasonable spot with a good amount of defense. We can take some out of special attack too. But this could be... I don't want to run a very fast Kyogre because I want it to work inside Trick Room, similarly to Moltres. And then Raichu, I was actually thinking Assault Vest would be pretty cool. And something like Fake Out, Thunderbolt, Volt Switch, and Nuzzle. And then you'd run Timid. And then you could go Max or you could go 180, which would outspeed base 100 Pokemon and outspeed like Xerneas and things like that. And then you still can get Nuzzles off on most of the fast things in the format. You could also up this a little bit too, depending on what you need to outspeed. And then you're going to want to run a pretty good amount of special defense, probably a lot of physical defense. And then maybe like just 4 points here, and then the rest into HP or something like that. This is just something I'm throwing together here, obviously. The spreads are going to come later once I've solidified these teams and done some testing. I'll solidify spreads. But I think this is a really cool way to take the team and something that I would consider using myself. So just to recap really quick here, I've thrown 3 cool Kyogre teams out. First one is our Ludicolo tech from before with Zashan, but replaced with Kyogre or Shifu. Secondly was this classic Tornogre team with a little bit of an Aegis/Flare with Wide Guard. Tailwind is really good with this, obviously, and this is something that a lot of people are going to be using, and I've already seen using. And lastly, a little bit of Raichu Kyogre tech. Something that is kind of interesting and also enticing to me is maybe instead of Bronzong, I explore Celesteela with Wide Guard. It works really nicely alongside Raichu and gets Wide Guard and Heavy Slam and stuff like that. So lots of room to innovate with Kyogre, but Kyogre, Raichu plus Steel type immune to ground is something I'm really interested in and I think is really solid. And with access to Snarl on Incineroar, we can pretty easily snarl the Calyrex if it is Life Orb and position ourselves. We're going to have a really solid lead of these two against Calyrex as well, and they're not really going to be able to overcome that amount of damage unless they have something like a Lele or something, right? Because Lele is going to chomp on Moltres pretty hard. So yeah, that's going to do it for me today. I think the next video is going to be a little bit more of team building. I'm hoping that at some point they make it so you can play Series 10 on Showdown. Right now you can't, and people are playing on a alternative Showdown server that I don't necessarily trust that much, so I don't really want to do it. But I'm talking to friends about these teams and we're hypothesizing, and I'm watching other people play too and getting some ideas. So yeah, these are 3 really cool Kyogre teams. I hope you all enjoyed. The next restricted we're going to talk about is probably going to be Xerneas, just because Xerneas, the way that Xerneas teams play fits my play style, right? Xerneas teams work really nicely with pivoting, and they are very position based, and it's a team that I think I would enjoy a lot. But I do want to touch on a couple of underused restricted as well, things that I think might be decent now that Dynamax has been removed. So thank you all so much for watching. I hope you enjoyed and I hope you learned something, and I will catch you all in the next video. Have a good one.